Hey guys, tonight we slip away from all the ordinary and head straight for the Aztec capital under a velvet sky. Picture this. You step quietly through the mists, sandals padding over ancient stone, only to spot Tenochtitlan, glowing at the heart of a vast, moonlit lake. The humid air is thick with scents you can't name, and somewhere nearby, water softly slaps against a wooden dock. You're in the shadow of temples so tall, you hope they aren't compensating for something. There's a hush. No busy traffic, no blaring screens, just the occasional laugh or snore drifting from narrow alleyways. Plus the rustle of palm leaves combing the breeze. A reality check. You probably won't survive this stroll. Not unless you can outwalk jaguars, dodge stone steps, and blend in with the locals. But hey, since it's just for tonight, relax. Everyone's safe behind a screen. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're not half asleep already, tell me your location and the local time in the comments. I want to know what city's about to conk out next. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You slip down a canal-side path, moonlight brushing your shoulders, as if someone's left dozens of silver cats prowling the rooftops. Tenochtitlan is quieter than you expect, but it's not quite still, not even close. Giant agave plants bend over walls, their blue leaves soft in the dark, and papaya trees nod, weighed down by heavy fruit. Every so often, a little splash breaks the quiet. Maybe a fish. Maybe something bigger. At this hour, the city is less intimidating, as if the monsters and conquerors are all tucked away for the night. You pass stone benches glimmering with dew and catch a whiff of something sharp. Incense from a late-night offering drifting across water so black it reflects the entire city upside down. The gardens here aren't like the neat yards you know. No mowers or flamingos or sprinklers, just thick tangles of green. Orchards curling around the city's edges, each plant crowded in with purpose. Historians still argue whether these gardens were strictly for food, or if the Aztecs wanted a living museum to show off their collection of weird, wonderful plants. You spot a row of ghostly white lilies near the water's edge, their faces tipped up to drink in moonbeams, surrounded by tufts of wild grass and strange, waxy succulents. A frog croaks, loud enough to rattle a trader's cart, and ducks paddle in a crooked row, disturbing tiny petals on the water's surface. Fun fact, the Aztecs believed some gardens were sacred, built as a nod to the gods, not just to keep people full. Remember that the next time you try to pass off dandelions as a lawn feature. Meanwhile, local legend claims the bravest gardeners competed to grow orchids so rare they only appeared under a full moon. A tale that, let's be honest, is way better than I overwatered it again. Stone arches rise up, marking ancient walkways as you press on. The city breathes beside you, restless but content, and each moment floats by, softer and slower. Maybe it's the magic of night, or just the sound of distant drums. Either way, you feel yourself settle in, ready for whatever else the Aztec midnight gardens might reveal. You follow the path as it curves along the edge of a canal, the water glinting with moonlight and the occasional ripple from something unseen. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and crushed leaves. And you realize you're not just walking beside any old garden. You're about to step into the world of Chinampas, the Aztec floating gardens. These aren't magic carpets, but they're close. Picture long rectangular islands made of mud, reeds, and rotting plants, all anchored with willow trees. The Aztecs built these by hand, stacking layer after layer until the islands floated just above the water, like giant green rafts. You hop onto a narrow wooden boat, careful not to tip yourself into the drink. Let's face it, you're not winning any Olympic swimming medals tonight. A sleepy boatman, his hair tied back with a strip of cloth, pushes you off with a long pole. The boat glides silently between the Chinampas, and you can see how the gardens stretch out in neat rows, each one bursting with corn, beans, squash, and flowers. The moonlight makes the leaves shimmer, and you wonder if you've drifted into a dream. Mainstream historians agree. Chinampas were the secret to Tenochtitlan's success. They turned a swampy lake into a food factory, feeding hundreds of thousands of people. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some say the Aztecs even grew flowers just for the gods, not for eating or selling. Imagine explaining that to your HOA. No, these aren't weeds, they're divine offerings. Historians still argue whether chinampas were first invented by the Aztecs or borrowed from earlier cultures, but everyone agrees they were a stroke of genius. As you float along, you notice the gardens are alive even at night. Fireflies blink in and out, tracing lazy patterns over the water. Somewhere, a gardener's torch flickers, casting long shadows as he checks on his crops. You hear the soft splash of a paddle and the low murmur of voices. Other night travelers, maybe, or just the city's ghosts making their rounds. The air is cool, but the scent of blooming flowers drifts over the water, sweet and a little wild. You lean over the side of the boat, peering into the dark water. It's deeper than you thought, and you spot the tangled roots of the chinampas reaching down like fingers. The willows planted at the corners sway gently, their branches trailing in the water. The Aztecs believed these trees protected the gardens, their roots holding everything together. There's even a story that the willows whisper secrets to those who listen closely enough. Though, honestly, you're more likely to hear a frog than a tree giving life advice. The boatman hums a tune, low and steady, and you feel the rhythm of the city all around you. The chinampas are more than just gardens. They're a patchwork quilt, stitched together by generations of hands. Some islands are covered in vegetables, others in bright marigolds or spiky agave. You spot a patch of night-blooming cacti, their white flowers glowing like tiny lanterns. The Aztecs prized these blooms, using them in rituals and as medicine. There's even a rumor that one emperor tried to grow a chinampa entirely out of orchids, just to impress a rival city. Historians still debate whether that was a power move or just a really expensive hobby. You pass under a low bridge, its stones slick with moss. The boatman points to a cluster of floating logs tied together with reeds. "New chinampa," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. You watch as a pair of gardeners shovel mud onto the logs, building up the island layer by layer. It's slow, muddy work, but you can see the pride in their movements. The Aztecs believed that tending the chinampas was a sacred duty, a way to honor the earth and the gods. Some even say the best gardeners were chosen for special midnight ceremonies, though what happened at those is still a mystery. A cool breeze stirs the water and you shiver, pulling your cloak tighter. The boat glides past a patch of wild orchids, their petals pale and delicate in the moonlight. You wonder how many secrets these gardens hold, how many stories are buried in the mud, waiting for someone to listen. The city is quiet, but the chinampas are alive, each one a tiny world floating in the dark. As you drift on, you realize you're not just seeing history, you're floating right through it, carried by the same waters that fed an empire. The boatman steers you toward the next bend, and you can't help but smile. Who knew floating gardens could be this peaceful? Or that you'd make it this far without falling in? Maybe you're more Aztec than you thought. You glide further along the canal, the boat's gentle rocking almost lulling you to sleep. But then, a sudden waft of perfume, sweet, thick, and a little spicy, snaps you back to the present. You sit up straighter, nose twitching, and realize you're drifting past a patch of night-blooming flowers. These aren't your average daisies. The Aztecs were obsessed with rare and beautiful plants, and their gardens were packed with blooms that only opened after dark. It's like the city saves its best show for those willing to stay up past bedtime. You spot a cluster of ghostly white flowers, their petals wide and waxy, glowing in the moonlight. These are night-blooming cereus, sometimes called Queen of the Night. The Aztecs believed these flowers were gifts from the moon goddess herself. and some priests claimed that inhaling their scent could bring prophetic dreams. Mainstream historians agree that the Aztecs cultivated dozens of fragrant plants, but there's still debate about which ones were used for rituals and which were just for showing off. Either way, you can't help but lean in for a better sniff. Just don't sneeze and tip the boat. A little further on, you spot the real stars of the show. Aztec orchids. These aren't the supermarket kind. Some are tiny, with petals like purple flames, while others dangle in long, twisting chains from the branches above. The Aztecs call them Quetzalcoatl, which, if you say it 3 times fast, you might summon a botanist. Orchids were prized for their beauty, but also for their mysterious powers. Some healers used them in love potions, while others believed they could cure fevers or even ward off evil spirits. There's a quirky tidbit for you. One old story claims that a certain orchid, when brewed into tea, could make you invisible for a night. Historians still argue whether that was just a clever way to sneak out past curfew. You reach out, brushing your fingers over a cluster of tiny, star-shaped blossoms. The petals are cool and slick, and the scent is almost dizzying, like honey, vanilla, and something wild you can't quite name. The Aztecs were masters of mixing scents, and their gardens were designed to be experienced with all the senses. You imagine a priest wandering through here, gathering flowers for a midnight ceremony, or a young couple sneaking a blossom to tuck behind an ear. The air is thick with possibility, and you can almost hear the whispers of old secrets carried on the breeze. A sudden rustle in the reeds makes you jump, but it's just a pair of ducks, quacking softly as they paddle by. You laugh at yourself, then remember that some Aztec nobles kept rare birds in their gardens, hoping their bright feathers would attract even more beautiful flowers. There's even a rumor that one emperor tried to crossbreed orchids with hummingbirds, just to see what would happen. Historians still debate whether that's true or just a gardener's tall tale, but you have to admit, it would make for a pretty wild bouquet. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the scents wash over you. The night air is cool, but the perfume of the flowers is warm and comforting. You think about how much work went into creating these gardens, how every plant was chosen for its beauty, its scent, or its secret powers. The Aztecs believed that flowers were the language of the gods, and that every blossom carried a message. Maybe tonight, if you listen closely, you'll hear one meant just for you. The boat drifts to a stop beside a small island, and you step out onto soft, mossy ground. The garden here is wild and tangled, with vines climbing over ancient stones and orchids blooming in every shade of purple and white. You wander through the flowers, careful not to crush anything underfoot. The air is alive with the hum of insects and the distant call of a nightbird. You spot a gardener kneeling beside a patch of orchids, whispering something as he gently ties a blossom to a reed. Maybe it's a prayer, or maybe he's just telling the plant to behave. Either way, you tiptoe past, not wanting to break the spell. You pause beside a pool of water, its surface covered in floating petals. The moon is reflected there, bright and perfect, and for a moment you feel like you're standing at the edge of 2 worlds, the waking and the dreaming, the past and the present. The Aztecs believed that certain flowers could open doors between worlds, and you can almost believe it. Standing here in the midnight garden, you take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the scent of orchids and night-blooming flowers. It's a smell you'll never forget, sweet, strange, and just a little bit magical. You wonder what secrets these gardens still hold, and what other wonders the night will bring. You wander deeper into the garden, the path narrowing as thick leaves brush against your arms. The air is alive with the soft, secret sounds of creatures that only come out after dark. You pause, listening, and realize you're not alone. Not by a long shot. The Aztec gardens are a midnight playground for all sorts of animals, each with their own job to do. You hear a chorus of frogs, their croaks echoing off the water, and spot a fat green one perched on a lily pad, looking like he owns the place. The Aztecs believed frogs were messengers from the rain god Tlaloc, and some even thought their songs could predict the weather. Mainstream historians agree that frogs were everywhere in Tenochtitlan, but there's still debate about whether they were seen as good luck or just noisy neighbors. You crouch down, trying to get a closer look, but the frog leaps away with a splash, leaving you with nothing but a wet sandal. You stand up, brushing off your pride, and notice tiny lights flickering in the air. Fireflies, dozens of them, float above the flowers, blinking in slow, lazy patterns. The Aztecs called them black flower and believed they carried the souls of ancestors. There's a quirky tidbit. Some old stories claim that if you catch a firefly and whisper a wish, it'll carry your message straight to the gods. Historians still argue whether fireflies were used in rituals or just admired for their glow. But you can't help but try to catch one anyway. You miss, but at least you don't fall in the canal. A sudden yip makes you freeze. You turn, heart pounding, and spot a coyote slipping through the shadows at the edge of the garden. Its eyes flash in the moonlight, and for a moment you wonder if it's sizing you up for a midnight snack. But the coyote just sniffs the air, then trots off, tail high. The Aztecs respected coyotes for their cleverness and believed they could guide lost souls home. There's even a legend that the first gardener learned his tricks by watching a coyote dig for roots. Historians still debate whether coyotes were seen as pests or protectors. But tonight, you're just glad this one isn't interested in your shoes. You keep walking, the garden alive with movement. A pair of bats swoop overhead, chasing insects, their wings whispering against the leaves. The Aztecs thought bats were creatures of the underworld, but also respected them for keeping the gardens free of pests. You spot a lizard sunning itself on a warm stone, even though there's no sun, just the heat left over from the day. The lizard blinks at you, unimpressed, and scurries away into the undergrowth. You pause beside a small pond, watching as a turtle paddles lazily through the water. The Aztecs believed turtles were symbols of patience and wisdom, and some gardeners kept them as good luck charms. There's a quirky story that one emperor had a pet turtle who lived to be over 100 years old, and that he consulted it before making big decisions. Historians still argue whether that's true or just a bedtime story for nervous rulers. But you have to admit, it's a nice thought. The garden is full of life, each creature playing its part. Frogs keep the insects in check, fireflies light up the night, and coyotes patrol the edges, making sure nothing gets too comfortable. You realize that the Aztecs designed their gardens to work with nature, not against it. Every plant and animal has a role, and the whole place runs like a well-oiled machine, if that machine was powered by moonlight and frog songs. You stop to rest on a stone bench, the cool surface soothing your tired feet. The night air is thick with a scent of flowers and the sound of distant drums. You watch as a gardener walks by, carrying a basket of herbs and a torch. He pauses to scatter a handful of seeds, then disappears into the shadows, leaving you alone with the creatures of the night. You close your eyes, listening to the garden's secret symphony. The frogs croak, the fireflies blink, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote howls. You feel a sense of peace, knowing that you're part of something ancient and wild. The Aztecs believed that the garden was a living thing, and that every creature, no matter how small, had a place in the grand design. You open your eyes, the world around you soft and shimmering in the moonlight. The garden is alive, and you're right in the middle of it, surrounded by frogs, fireflies, and coyotes. You smile, knowing that you found a little bit of magic in the heart of the city. You rise from the stone bench, stretching your legs as the garden symphony continues around you. The air feels heavier now, thick with anticipation and the scent of crushed petals. Somewhere nearby, a bell chimes softly, 1, 2, 3 times, signaling the start of something special. You follow the sound, curiosity tugging you along winding paths lined with moonflowers and tall, swaying grasses. The city's usual bustle is replaced by a hush, as if even the frogs are holding their breath. You round a bend and spot a small group gathered beneath a canopy of flowering trees. Their white robes shimmer in the moonlight, and each person holds a bundle of fresh-cut flowers. Orchids, marigolds, and lilies, their colors muted but still vibrant in the night. At the center stands a priest, his face painted with swirling patterns, holding a bowl of smoldering copal incense. The smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of pine and honey, and you can't help but wonder if it's strong enough to cover up the smell of your last midnight snack. The group begins to chant, their voices low and rhythmic, blending with the night sounds. The priest scatters petals onto the ground, creating a soft, colorful carpet. You watch as he dips a flower into the incense smoke, then gently brushes it over the heads of the others, blessing them with the fragrance. Mainstream historians agree that flower offering rituals were a key part of Aztec religious life, especially at night when the world felt closer to the gods. But there's still debate about the exact meaning of each flower. Some say orchids were for love, marigolds for the dead, and lilies for purity, but no one can quite agree. Maybe the gods just liked variety. A quirky tidbit. Some old records claim that the priests would sometimes sneak in a particularly rare flower, hoping to impress the gods, or maybe just outdo the neighboring temple. Imagine a divine version of my gardens better than yours. You watch as the priest carefully places a midnight orchid at the center of the offering, its petals almost glowing in the dark. The group bows their heads, and for a moment, the only sound is the crackle of the incense and the distant call of a nightbird. The ritual continues, each person stepping forward to add their own handful of petals to the growing pile. You notice that some whisper prayers as they do, while others simply close their eyes and breathe in the scent. The air is thick with hope, longing, and maybe a little bit of competition. After all, who wouldn't want their flower to be the one that gods notice? Historians still argue whether these rituals were meant to bring rain, ensure a good harvest, or just keep the gods in a good mood. Whatever the reason, it's clear that flowers were more than just decoration. They were a bridge between worlds. You edge closer, careful not to disturb the ceremony. The priest raises his hands, scattering the last of the petals into the air. They drift down like colorful snow, landing softly on the grass and water. The group begins a final chant, their voices rising and falling like waves. You feel a shiver run down your spine, not from fear, but from the sense that you're witnessing something ancient and powerful. As the ritual ends, the group quietly disperses, leaving the offering behind. The priest lingers, kneeling to arrange the petals into a spiral pattern. You wonder if there's a secret meaning to the design, or if he's just a fan of garden art. There's a rumor that some priests would spend hours perfecting their petal arrangements, hoping to catch the eye of a passing deity, or maybe just the emperor. Historians still debate whether these midnight rituals were open to everyone or reserved for the elite. But tonight, you're glad you got a front row seat. You step forward, careful not to disturb the spiral of petals. The scent of incense lingers in the air, mixing with the perfume of the flowers. You close your eyes, breathing it in, and feel a sense of calm settle over you. The Aztecs believed that rituals like this could bring balance to the world, connecting the living with the gods and the earth. Maybe they were right, or maybe it's just the power of a really good bouquet. You open your eyes, the garden around you soft and shimmering in the moonlight. The petals at your feet glow faintly, and you wonder what wishes and prayers they carry. You smile, knowing that you've witnessed a little bit of magic hidden away in the heart of the city. You slip away from the fading incense and scattered petals, curiosity pulling you deeper into the garden's maze. The air is cooler here, and the paths are narrower, lined with thick hedges and tall, swaying bamboo. You notice the stones beneath your feet are smoother, worn down by centuries of careful footsteps. A hush settles over this part of the garden, broken only by the distant splash of water and the soft hoot of an owl. You get the feeling you're not supposed to be here, like you've wandered into a place meant for someone far more important. You duck beneath a low archway, its surface carved with swirling patterns of vines and feathers. On the other side, the garden opens up into a hidden world. This is the Emperor's private retreat, a place few ever see. The plants here are different, taller, stranger, and more carefully arranged. You spot a row of towering cycads, their leaves fanning out like green umbrellas, and a cluster of rare orchids clinging to the branches of a gnarled old tree. The air is thick with the scent of vanilla and something sharper, almost spicy. You wonder if the emperor ever got lost in here, or if he had a secret map tucked into his feathered cloak. Mainstream historians agree that Aztec emperors were obsessed with collecting rare and beautiful plants, often sending expeditions far and wide to bring back the most unusual specimens. Some say the emperor's garden was a living museum, a place to show off his power and taste. But there's still debate about just how private these gardens really were. Did the emperor stroll here alone? Or was he always trailed by a crowd of advisors, guards, and maybe a nosy gardener or two? You imagine him sneaking out at midnight just to enjoy a moment of peace among the flowers. You wander down a winding path, the stones set in swirling patterns that seem to lead you in circles. You spot a small pond, its surface covered in floating lotus flowers. A pair of turtles bask on a rock, their shells gleaming in the moonlight. There's a quirky tidbit. Some old stories claim the emperor named each turtle after a different city in his empire, would talk to them as if they were old friends. Historians still argue whether this was a sign of wisdom or just a creative way to avoid boring meetings. You pause beside a bed of midnight orchids, their petals deep purple and almost black in the shadows. The Aztecs believed these flowers held special power, and some say the emperor would pluck one before important ceremonies, tucking it behind his ear for luck. You reach out, careful not to touch, and notice a tiny golden beetle crawling along a stem. The garden is alive with hidden treasures, each one more beautiful than the last. You follow the path to a small pavilion, its roof covered in woven reeds and bright feathers. Inside, you find a stone bench and a low table set with bowls of fruit and honey. You can almost picture the emperor sitting here, sipping a cup of chocolate and watching the moon rise over the city. There's a rumor that he would invite poets and musicians to join him, filling the night with songs and stories. Historians still debate whether these gatherings were grand affairs or quiet moments of reflection, but you like to imagine a little of both. You sit for a moment, letting the peace of the garden settle over you. The air is filled with the soft hum of insects and the distant sound of water. You spot a gardener moving quietly among the plants, trimming a branch here, tying up a vine there. He glances your way, but doesn't seem surprised to see you. Maybe he's used to midnight visitors, or maybe he just knows better than to question someone wandering the emperor's private paths. You rise and wander further, discovering a hidden alcove filled with flowering cacti and tiny jewel-bright hummingbirds. The Aztecs believed hummingbirds were messengers from the gods, and some say the emperor kept a special feeder just for them. There's a quirky story that one night, a hummingbird landed on the emperor's shoulder and whispered a secret that changed the course of history. Historians still argue whether that's true or just a bedtime story for royal children, but you can't help but hope it's real. You pause at the edge of the garden, looking back at the winding paths, the rare flowers, and the quiet beauty of the emperor's retreat. You feel a sense of awe, knowing you've walked where only a few ever have. The garden is a world within a world, a place of secrets and dreams, hidden away from the noise of the city. You slip back through the archway, the scent of midnight orchids clinging to your clothes. The emperor's garden fades behind you, but its magic lingers, a reminder that even the most powerful need a place to dream. You wander back into the main garden, the memory of the emperor's secret retreat still fresh in your mind. The air is thick with the scent of orchids, and you can't help but wonder what makes these flowers so special. The Aztecs didn't just grow orchids for their beauty. They believed these delicate blooms held real power. You spot a cluster of Coatzacoalcocitl, their petals curling like tiny flames, and remember how the priests handled them with such care during the midnight ritual. It's easy to see why. In the moonlight, the orchids look almost otherworldly, as if they're glowing from within. Mainstream historians agree that orchids played a big role in Aztec medicine and mythology. Healers would crush the petals and mix them with honey or cocoa, creating potions for everything from fevers to broken hearts. There's even evidence that some orchids were used as a kind of ancient love potion. The Aztecs believed that giving someone a rare orchid could spark romance or heal a wounded relationship. You can't help but laugh, imagining a lovesick noble sneaking through the garden at midnight, searching for the perfect bloom to win someone's heart. Historians still argue whether these potions actually worked, or if the power of suggestion was doing most of the heavy lifting. You pause beside a patch of wild orchids, their colors ranging from deep purple to pale yellow. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec gardeners believed that certain orchids could only be found by moonlight, and that picking them during the day would make them lose their magic. Others claimed that the rarest orchids grew where lightning had struck the ground, marking the spot as sacred. You wonder if anyone ever tried to fake a lightning strike, just to get a better spot in the garden. You kneel down, brushing your fingers over a cluster of tiny star-shaped flowers. The petals are soft and cool, and the scent is sweet with a hint of something spicy. The Aztecs believed that each orchid had its own spirit, and that talking to the flowers could bring good luck. You whisper a greeting, just in case, and hope the garden spirits are feeling generous tonight. You remember the story of the emperor's hummingbird visitor, and wonder if the birds are drawn to the orchids for their nectar or their magic. The Aztecs believed that hummingbirds were the souls of fallen warriors, returning to the world in search of beauty and sweetness. There's a rumor that some priests would plant special orchids just to attract these sacred birds, hoping to catch a glimpse of a hero's spirit. Historians still debate whether this was a common practice or just a poetic legend, but you like the idea of gardens as a meeting place for the living and the dead. You wander further, spotting a group of healers gathered around a stone table. They're grinding orchid petals with a smooth stone, mixing the powder with honey and a splash of pulque, a fermented drink made from agave. One healer dips a finger into the mixture and tastes it, nodding in approval. You watch as they fill tiny clay pots with the potion, ready to be delivered to those in need. There's a quirky story that one emperor became so obsessed with orchid medicine that he ordered his gardeners to grow nothing else for an entire season. Historians still argue whether this led to a shortage of vegetables or just a lot of very healthy, very romantic nobles. You pause beside a small shrine, its surface covered in offerings of flowers, fruit, and feathers. The Aztecs believed that orchids could carry prayers to the gods, and some say that the rarest blooms were reserved for the most important ceremonies. You spot a midnight orchid, its petals almost black, placed at the center of the shrine. You wonder what wish or prayer it carries, and if the gods are listening tonight. You sit for a moment, letting the scent of orchids wash over you. The garden is quiet, the only sound the distant croak of a frog and the soft rustle of leaves. You think about all the stories and secrets hidden in these flowers. Tales of love, healing, and magic, passed down through generations. The Aztecs believed that orchids were a gift from the gods, a reminder that beauty and power can be found in the most delicate places. You rise, feeling a sense of wonder and gratitude. The garden is full of mysteries, and you're lucky enough to witness a few of them tonight. You smile, knowing that the orchids will keep their secrets, waiting for the next dreamer to come along. You leave the healers and their fragrant potions behind, following a narrow path that winds between rows of tall maize and tangled squash vines. The garden feels quieter here, but you soon notice the soft glow of torches bobbing in the distance. You move closer, curiosity piqued, and spot a group of gardeners working by the flickering light. Their shadows stretch long and thin across the ground, making them look like gentle giants tending a world of green. These midnight gardeners are a special breed, dedicated, patient, and maybe just a little bit superstitious. The Aztecs believed that some plants grew best when tended at night, away from the harsh sun and prying eyes. Mainstream historians agree that night gardening was common, especially during the hottest months. But there's still debate about whether it was done for practical reasons or as part of secret rituals. You watch as one gardener kneels beside a row of beans, whispering softly as he tucks a stray vine back into place. Maybe he's reciting a prayer, or maybe he's just asking the plant to behave. Either way, you're not about to interrupt. A quirky tidbit: some Aztec gardeners wore special amulets made from jade or bone, believing these charms would protect their crops from pests and bad luck. You spot a woman with a necklace of tiny carved frogs, her hands moving quickly as she sprinkles ash around the base of a chili plant. She glances up, gives you a knowing smile, and returns to her work. You wonder if the frogs are for good luck, or if she's just a fan of amphibian jewelry. Historians still argue whether these charms actually worked, or if they were just a way to feel a little braver in the dark. You move closer, watching as the gardeners work together in near silence. One man carries a clay pot filled with water, carefully pouring it at the roots of a young avocado tree. Another uses a sharp obsidian blade to trim away dead leaves, his movements quick and precise. The Aztecs were masters of garden tools, using everything from deer antlers to sharpened shells. You spot a young boy with a basket of crushed eggshells, scattering them over the soil to keep snails away. There's a rumor that the best gardeners could tell the health of a plant just by listening to the sound of its leaves in the wind. Historians still debate whether this is true or just a sign of too many late nights in the garden. You pause beside a woman tending a patch of night-blooming cacti. She hums softly as she works, her hands moving with practiced ease. She explains, without looking up, that the cacti must be watered only after sunset, or their flowers will close up and refuse to bloom. You nod, pretending you knew that all along, and make a mental note to try it on your next houseplant. The gardeners move with a quiet rhythm, each task flowing into the next. You notice that they work in pairs, one holding the torch while the other tends the plants. The light flickers over their faces, casting strange shadows and making the garden feel even more mysterious. There's a quirky story that some gardeners believed the torches themselves had to be made from certain woods. Willow for good luck, pine for strong roots, and agave for extra sweetness in the fruit. Historians still argue whether this was based on science or just a way to use up leftover branches. You watch as the gardeners finish their work, gathering up their tools and baskets. They pause for a moment, standing in a circle, and share a drink from a clay cup. You catch the scent of pukai, sweet and sour, and wonder if it's a reward for a job well done, or just a way to stay awake until dawn. The group laughs quietly, trading stories and gentle teasing. You realize that the garden is more than just a place to grow food or flowers. It's a community, a place where people come together to share work, wisdom, and the occasional midnight snack. You linger for a moment, feeling the warmth of the torchlight and the quiet pride of the gardeners. The Aztecs believed that tending the earth was a sacred duty, a way to honor the gods and ensure the survival of the city. You watch as the group disappears down a winding path, their torches bobbing like fireflies in the dark. The garden is quiet once more, but you know that the work never really ends. There's always another plant to water, another weed to pull, another secret to discover. You smile, grateful for the glimpse into this hidden world. The midnight gardeners have their own magic, and tonight you're lucky enough to share in it. You wander away from the torchlit bustle of the gardeners, drawn by the gentle sound of water lapping against stone. The path opens onto a wide canal, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting the moon and stars so perfectly you feel like you could step right into the sky. The Aztecs built these sacred waterways to connect every corner of their city, and at night they become ribbons of silver winding through the gardens. You find a small wooden dock and sit at the edge, letting your feet dangle just above the cool water. A soft breeze stirs the surface, sending ripples across the moon's reflection. You watch as a pair of ducks glide by, leaving trails of light in their wake. The air is thick with the scent of water lilies and damp earth, and you can hear the distant hum of insects and the occasional splash of a fish. Mainstream historians agree that the Aztec canals were engineering marvels, designed not just for transport, but also to irrigate the gardens and keep the city cool. But there's still debate about how much of the canal system was sacred. Were some waterways reserved for rituals, or did everyone get to enjoy a midnight paddle? You imagine the priests gliding along in their canoes, chanting prayers to the moon and stars. You spot a small boat drifting toward you, its prow decorated with garlands of marigolds and orchids. The boatman, wrapped in a dark cloak, nods in greeting and gestures for you to climb aboard. You step carefully into the boat, settling onto a woven mat as the boatman pushes off from the dock. The boat glides silently through the water. The only sound, the gentle splash of the paddle and the soft rustle of reeds along the banks. As you drift along, you notice the way the moonlight dances on the water, turning every ripple into a trail of silver. The boatman hums a low, haunting tune, and you feel the rhythm of the city all around you. The gardens on either side of the canal are lush and wild, their shadows deep and mysterious. You spot the occasional flash of a firefly or the glint of a frog's eye, but mostly it's just you, the boatman, and the endless reflection of the night sky. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztecs believed that the canals were home to water spirits, mischievous creatures who would tip over boats or steal oars if you didn't show them proper respect. You glanced nervously at the water, half expecting to see a pair of glowing eyes staring back at you. The boatman catches your look and grins, tapping the side of the boat 3 times. A traditional way to ask the spirits for safe passage. Historians still argue whether these stories were meant to scare children, or if the adults believed them to. But you're not taking any chances. The boat glides under a low stone bridge, its arch covered in moss and trailing vines. You duck your head, feeling the cool dampness of the air beneath the bridge. On the other side, the canal widens, and you can see the outlines of distant temples and palaces, their shapes softened by the mist. The Aztecs believed that water was a bridge between worlds, connecting the living with the gods and the ancestors. You wonder how many prayers and secrets have floated down these canals over the centuries. The boatman steers you toward a quiet cove where the water is so still it looks like polished obsidian. He points to the surface, and you see the reflection of the moon framed by the branches of a willow tree. The Aztecs believed that the moon was a goddess, watching over the city and its gardens. Some say that if you make a wish while looking at her reflection, she'll grant it. If she's in a good mood, of course. You close your eyes and make a wish, just in case. You sit in silence for a while, listening to the gentle sounds of the night. The boat rocks softly, and you feel yourself drifting, not just on the water, but in time. The city around you is ancient and alive, its secrets hidden in the shadows and the reflections. You think about all the people who have traveled these canals, gardeners, priests, lovers, and dreamers, each one leaving a trace behind. The boatman finally steers you back toward the dock, the journey ending all too soon. You step out onto solid ground, the scent of water and flowers clinging to your clothes. You glance back at the canal, watching as the boat disappears into the mist, and feel a sense of peace settle over you. The sacred waterways have their own magic, and tonight you've been lucky enough to float through it. You step off the dock, your feet finding the familiar crunch of gravel as you follow a winding path away from the water. The air is changing, warmer, busier, and tinged with 100 different scents. You round a corner and suddenly find yourself in the heart of the nighttime flower market, a place that feels like a secret festival tucked inside the city's sleeping hours. Lanterns hang from poles, casting golden pools of light over stalls piled high with blooms. The market is alive with quiet chatter, laughter, and the soft rustle of petals as traders arrange their wares. You wander between the stalls, eyes wide at the riot of color and fragrance. There are baskets overflowing with marigolds, bundles of lilies tied with reeds, and trays of orchids in every shade from pale pink to deep violet. The Aztecs loved their flowers, and the market is proof. Here, you can find blooms for every occasion, offerings for the gods, garlands for festivals, and bouquets for sweethearts. Mainstream historians agree that Tenochtitlan's flower markets were famous throughout the region, drawing traders from distant cities. But there's still debate about how much of the trade happened at night. Some say the best deals and rarest flowers were only available after dark, when the city's elite came to shop in secret. You pause at a stall where a woman is weaving a crown of white lilies, her fingers moving quickly and surely. She offers you a smile and a sprig of mint to sniff, its sharp scent cutting through the sweetness of the other flowers. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec traders believe that sniffing mint before haggling would clear your mind and help you get a better deal. You give it a try, just in case you decide to bargain for a midnight orchid. Historians still argue whether this was a real tradition or just a clever way to sell more mint, but you have to admit, it does make you feel a little sharper. You move on, drawn by the sound of laughter from a group of young men selling garlands of marigolds. They toss petals at each other, daring you to guess how many flowers are in a single garland. You take a wild guess and they reward you with a single marigold. Its scent, earthy and strong. The Aztecs believed marigolds could guide spirits home, and you wonder how many of these flowers will end up on altars before sunrise. You stop at a stall where a man is selling tiny clay pots filled with orchid-scented oil. He dips a reed into one and lets you smell it. Rich, sweet, and a little spicy. He claims it's the secret to winning hearts and soothing headaches, though you suspect he'd say anything to make a sale. There's a rumor that some traders would invent wild stories about their flowers. One might claim his lilies bloomed only under a full moon, while another swears his orchids were watered with sacred spring water. Historians still debate how much of the market's magic was real and how much was just good marketing, but you can't help but be charmed by the stories. You wander further, sampling the scents and listening to the gossip that floats through the air. Two women argue over the price of a rare blue orchid, while a boy tries to trade a handful of feathers for a single rose. You overhear a trader boasting that his flowers were picked from the emperor's own garden. Though judging by the dirt under his nails, you're not so sure. The market is a swirl of color, scent, and sound. A place where everyone is searching for something special. You pause at the edge of the market, watching as a group of musicians set up near a fountain. They play soft, lilting tunes on flutes and drums, their music blending with the hum of voices and the rustle of petals. The Aztecs believed that music and flowers were gifts from the gods, meant to bring joy and beauty to the world. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the music and the scent of flowers wash over you, and feel a sense of peace settle in your chest. You open your eyes and notice a young girl weaving a garland of midnight orchids, her hands moving with practiced grace. She catches your gaze and offers you a flower, its petals cool and smooth in your palm. You thank her, tucking the orchid behind your ear, and wonder what stories you'll carry home from this magical market. As you leave, the market begins to quiet, the traders packing up their flowers and lanterns. The scent of orchids and marigolds lingers in the air, a reminder of the city's love for beauty and celebration. You walk away with a smile, your pockets full of petals and your mind full of stories. Grateful for the chance to wander through the scented heart of the Aztec night. You slip away from the flower market, your hands still dusted with pollen and your mind swirling with the scents of lilies, marigolds, and orchids. The path ahead is quieter now, winding between rows of edible plants and fruit trees. The air is thick with the promise of something delicious, and your stomach gives a hopeful little rumble. You realize that the Aztec gardens weren't just about beauty, they were also about food, and some of the best treats came straight from the midnight garden. You wander past a patch of squash blossoms, their yellow petals wide open in the moonlight. A gardener kneels nearby, carefully picking the fattest flowers and placing them in a woven basket. She grins and offers you one, showing you how to pinch off the stem and pop the blossom into your mouth. The taste is delicate and slightly sweet, with a hint of earthiness. Mainstream historians agree that the Aztecs loved edible flowers, using them in everything from stews to tamales. But there's still debate about which flowers were considered delicacies, and which were just garden snacks for hungry workers. You move on, drawn by the scent of something spicy and warm. A group of cooks has set up a small fire, their clay pots bubbling with a thick, fragrant stew. You watch as they add handfuls of bright orange marigold petals, chopped herbs, and slices of chayote squash. One cook ladles out a steaming bowl and hands it to you, winking as she warns you to blow on it first. You take a cautious sip. The flavor's rich and complex. Earthy beans, sweet corn, and a kick of chili that makes your eyes water just a little. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztecs believed that eating flowers at midnight would bring good dreams, while others claimed it could help you see the future. Historians still argue whether these beliefs were rooted in tradition or just a clever way to get kids to eat their veggies. You sit on a low stone wall, savoring your stew and watching as the cooks prepare more midnight snacks. They stuff squash blossoms with beans and herbs, then wrap them in corn husks and roast them over the fire. Another cook slices open a ripe guava, its pink flesh glistening in the lantern light, and offers you a piece. The fruit is sweet and tangy, a perfect contrast to the savory stew. You notice a bowl of tiny, bright red flowers, nasturtiums, being tossed into a salad, their peppery flavor adding a little zing to the mix. A group of children runs by, giggling as they chase each other with handfuls of edible petals. One boy dares his friend to eat a particularly spicy chili flower, and the resulting face is enough to make everyone laugh. You remember the stories you heard earlier about love potions and magical orchids, and wonder if any of these midnight snacks have secret powers. There's a rumor that one emperor insisted on eating a different flower every night, convinced it would keep him young and wise. Historians still debate whether this was a real health regimen or just an excuse to avoid boring dinners. You finish your stew and wander over to a table piled high with tamales wrapped in banana leaves. The cook unwraps one for you, revealing a filling of beans, squash, and bright yellow petals. The flavors are subtle and comforting, the kind of food that makes you feel at home even in the middle of a strange, ancient city. You thank the cook, who tells you that every family has their own secret recipe, passed down through generations. Some add wild herbs, others use rare flowers, and a few even sneak in a pinch of cacao for a hint of chocolatey richness. You pause beside a small pond, watching as a group of women gather watercress and wild mint. They laugh and chat, their baskets overflowing with green leaves and tiny edible blossoms. The Aztecs believed that sharing food from the garden was a way to build community and honor the earth. You feel a sense of connection, knowing that people have gathered here for centuries, sharing meals and stories under the same moonlit sky. As the night deepens, the cooks pack up their pots and baskets, leaving behind the scent of roasted corn and fresh flowers. You walk away with a full belly and a happy heart, grateful for the chance to taste the flavors of the Aztec garden. You wonder what other secrets the night holds and whether you'll dream of orchids, marigolds, or just another bowl of midnight stew. You wander away from the last glowing embers of the cook fires, the taste of edible flowers still lingering on your tongue. The garden feels quieter now. The laughter and music of the market replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant croak of frogs. You follow a winding path, half hidden by overgrown vines, and soon realize you're not alone. Two figures move ahead of you, their voices low and urgent, glancing over their shoulders as they slip between the shadows. You slow your steps, curiosity piqued. After all, who can resist a little midnight intrigue? You duck behind a stand of tall maize, careful not to snap any stalks, and listen as the figures whisper. It's in the Emperor's garden, one says, voice barely above a breath. The midnight orchid. If we get it tonight, we'll be rich for a year. The other laughs nervously, clutching a small sack. If we get caught, we'll be feeding the coyotes. You stifle a grin, realizing you've stumbled onto a classic Aztec caper. Orchid thieves on the prowl. Mainstream historians agree that rare orchids were among the most prized possessions in Tenochtitlan, sometimes worth more than gold or jade. The emperor's private collection was legendary, and rumors of thefts and secret trades were common. But there's still debate about how often these heists actually happened. Were they the stuff of legend, or did gardeners really have to guard their blooms from sticky-fingered rivals? Tonight, it seems, the stories are true. You follow the thieves as they creep along the edge of the garden, ducking behind statues and slipping through gaps in the hedges. The moonlight glints off the leaves, casting strange shadows that make the whole scene feel like a dream. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec gardeners would sprinkle chili powder around their rarest plants, hoping to deter thieves. You wonder if the emperor's midnight orchids are protected by more than just sharp-eyed guards. The thieves pause at the edge of a small pond, peering across to where a cluster of midnight orchids bloom in the shadows. The flowers are breathtaking, deep purple, almost black, with petals that seem to shimmer in the moonlight. One thief pulls out a tiny obsidian knife, the blade catching the light as he prepares to snip a blossom. You hold your breath, half expecting a guard to leap out from behind a bush, or a coyote to start howling in alarm. Instead, a gardener appears, silent as a shadow, blocking the thief's path. He folds his arms and raises an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by their sneaking. "Looking for something?" he asks, voice calm but firm. The thieves freeze, caught in the act. For a moment, no one moves. Then, in a burst of panic, the thieves drop their sack and dash into the darkness, leaving the gardener shaking his head and muttering about amateurs. You step out from your hiding place, trying to look as innocent as possible. The gardener spots you and sighs, waving you over. "People will do anything for a rare orchid," he says, kneeling to check the flowers for damage. But they never think about the work it takes to grow them. He gently lifts a blossom, inspecting it for bruises. These flowers are more than just pretty, they're a piece of our history. Some say the midnight orchid only blooms for those with a pure heart, but I think it just likes a little peace and quiet. There's a rumor that the emperor once disguised himself as a gardener to catch orchid thieves in the act, rewarding the cleverest with a place in his court. Historians still argue whether this is true or just a story to scare would-be thieves. But you can't help but imagine the emperor sneaking through the garden in the dead of night, cloak trailing behind him. The gardener offers you a small, unblemished orchid, its petals cool and velvety in your hand. "Take this as a reminder," he says, "that beauty is meant to be shared, not stolen." You thank him, tucking the flower behind your ear, and promise to keep an eye out for any more suspicious characters. As you walk away, you glance back at the midnight orchids, their petals glowing softly in the moonlight. The garden is full of secrets and stories, some whispered, some shouted, and some hidden in the shadows. You smile, knowing you've witnessed a little bit of mischief and a lot of heart, and wonder what other adventures the night might bring. You slip the midnight orchid behind your ear, feeling a little like a secret agent as you wander deeper into the garden's shadows. The air is cooler here, and the moonlight barely reaches the ground through the thick canopy of leaves. The garden, so beautiful and peaceful by torchlight, suddenly feels a bit more mysterious and maybe even a little dangerous. You remind yourself that every paradise has its thorns, and the Aztec gardens are no exception. You step carefully, eyes adjusting to the dimness, and nearly trip over a tangle of thorny vines. You catch yourself just in time, but not before a sharp spine nicks your ankle. You wince, remembering that the Aztecs grew more than just pretty flowers. Some plants were chosen for their defenses. Mainstream historians agree that certain areas of the gardens were planted with spiky agave, prickly pear, and thorny acacia, not just for their usefulness, but also as a natural security system. But there's still debate about whether these living fences were meant to keep out animals, thieves, or just nosy neighbors. Either way, you make a mental note to watch your step. You move on, brushing past a patch of nettles that sting your hand with a tingly burn. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec healers believed that a quick slap with nettles could cure aches and pains, or at least distract you from whatever was hurting before. You're not sure if you buy it, but you do feel a little more awake. You spot a gardener nearby, carefully harvesting the nettles with a pair of wooden tongs. He grins and tells you that nettle soup is a favorite among the bravest eaters, though he admits it's an acquired taste. The garden's dangers aren't just prickly plants. You hear a soft rustle in the undergrowth and freeze, heart pounding. A long, sinuous shape glides across the path. A snake, its scales glinting in the moonlight. The Aztecs respected snakes, seeing them as symbols of wisdom and renewal, but they also knew to keep their distance. There's a rumor that the emperor's garden once housed a rare feathered serpent, a living tribute to the god Quetzalcoatl. Historians still argue whether this was a real animal or just a very creative gardener with a lot of feathers and glue. You wait until the snake disappears into the shadows, then continue on, a little more cautious than before. The garden is full of hidden dangers, from poisonous berries to hidden pits dug to trap unwelcome visitors. You spot a sign, just a simple stone with a carved skull, warning you away from a patch of nightshade. You take the hint and steer clear, grateful for the ancient gardener's sense of humor. You pause beside a small pond, its surface covered in duckweed and floating petals. The water looks inviting, but you remember the stories you heard earlier about mischievous water spirits. There's a quirky story that some gardeners would leave offerings of flowers and honey at the water's edge, hoping to keep the spirits happy and the fish plentiful. Historians still debate whether these rituals were based on real encounters or just a way to explain the occasional missing sandal. You sit on a mossy stone, catching your breath and listening to the night sounds. The garden is alive with the buzz of insects, the croak of frogs, and the distant howl of a coyote. You realize that the dangers here are part of what makes the garden so magical. Every step is an adventure, every shadow a mystery. The Aztecs believed that facing these risks was a way to prove your courage and earn the garden's blessings. You rise, brushing the dirt from your clothes, and continue your journey. The path winds through a grove of tall, spiky agave, their blue-green leaves sharp as knives. You remember the story about gardeners using agave thorns as needles, and wonder how many pricked fingers it took to invent that trick. You spot a cluster of mushrooms growing in the shade, their caps bright red and white. The Aztecs used some mushrooms in rituals, but others were strictly off limits. One bite, and you'd be seeing more than just garden spirits. You step carefully, grateful for the moonlight and your own growing caution. The garden's hidden dangers are real, but so is its beauty. You smile, knowing that every paradise has its shadows, and that sometimes the best stories are found in the places where beauty and danger meet. You leave the thorny groves and shadowy corners behind, following a winding path that leads you back toward the heart of the garden. The air feels softer here, scented with night-blooming jasmine and the faint trace of incense from earlier rituals. The city is quieter now, the last echoes of laughter and music fading into the gentle hum of insects. You spot a small group gathered beneath a canopy of flowering trees, their faces lit by the soft glow of lanterns. You move closer, curiosity drawing you in, and realize you've stumbled upon a sacred sleep ceremony, a ritual meant to invite dreams and blessings from the gods. You settle onto a woven mat at the edge of the group, feeling the cool grass beneath you. The priest, dressed in a robe embroidered with silver threads, moves gracefully among the participants, sprinkling petals and drops of scented oil onto their foreheads. The air is thick with the aroma of orchids, vanilla, and copal, a resin burned to carry prayers skyward. Mainstream historians agree that the Aztecs practiced rituals to encourage restful sleep and prophetic dreams, often using flowers and incense as part of the ceremony. But there's still debate about whether these rituals were reserved for priests and nobles or shared with the whole community. Tonight, at least, everyone seems welcome. The priest begins to chant, his voice low and rhythmic, blending with the rustle of leaves and the distant croak of frogs. You close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you and feel your breath slow. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztecs believed that sleeping in a garden surrounded by flowers would help your soul travel safely through the dream world. Others claimed that certain orchids could ward off nightmares, while marigolds would guide your spirit back home by morning. You wonder if you'll dream of floating gardens, midnight feasts, or maybe just a world where you never have to set an alarm. A gentle breeze stirs the petals around you, and the priest moves from person to person, brushing their faces with a bundle of fragrant herbs. You feel the soft tickle of leaves against your skin and catch the scent of wild mint and lavender. The Aztecs believed that these plants could calm the mind and open the heart to messages from the gods. There is a rumor that the emperor himself once fell asleep in the garden and woke with a vision that changed the fate of the city. Historians still argue whether this was a true prophecy or just the result of a particularly strong batch of orchid tea. You listen as the priest tells a story, his words weaving a tapestry of gods and heroes, gardens and stars. He speaks of Tlaloc, the rain god, who waters the earth with his tears, and Quetzal, the goddess of flowers and love, who blesses the gardens with beauty and fragrance. The story drifts through your mind like a gentle river, carrying you toward the edge of sleep. The group grows quiet, each person wrapped in their own dreams and memories. You feel the weight of the day slip away, replaced by a sense of peace and belonging. The garden is a world apart, a place where the boundaries between waking and dreaming blur. You remember the frogs and fireflies, the midnight orchids and secret rituals, and feel grateful for every moment spent in this magical place. You lie back, staring up at the sky through a lattice of leaves and blossoms. The stars twinkle above, and you imagine the gods watching over you, smiling at your journey through their garden. The air is cool and sweet, and you feel yourself drifting, not just into sleep, but into a world of dreams shaped by flowers, moonlight, and ancient stories. You close your eyes, letting the sounds and scents of the garden carry you away. The Aztecs believed that dreams were messages from the gods, and tonight you're ready to listen. You smile, knowing that whatever dreams come, you'll wake with the memory of a night spent in the heart of a living, breathing paradise. You wake slowly, the world around you still wrapped in the gentle hush of pre-dawn. The garden is cool and damp, the air tinged with the scent of dew and crushed petals. You sit up, rubbing your eyes, and notice the first hints of light creeping over the city's rooftops. The stars are fading, replaced by a soft, golden glow that touches the tops of the tallest trees and glimmers on the surface of the canals. The Aztec night is ending, and the garden is about to awaken. You rise from your mat, stretching your arms overhead as the other dreamers stir around you. The priest gathers the last of the petals, his robe now dusted with gold from the rising sun. He offers a quiet blessing, thanking the gods for safe passage through the night. Mainstream historians agree that dawn ceremonies were an important part of Aztec life, marking the transition from darkness to light and honoring the gods who watched over the city. But there's still debate about whether these rituals were grand public events or quiet moments shared among friends and family. This morning, it feels like a little of both. You wander through the garden, marveling at how different everything looks in the early light. The midnight orchids, so mysterious in the dark, now glow with vibrant color, deep purples, fiery reds, and creamy whites. The marigolds stand tall, their petals open wide to greet the sun. You spot a hummingbird darting from flower to flower, its wings a blur of emerald and sapphire. The Aztecs believed that hummingbirds carried messages between the living and the gods, and you wonder what news this little bird is delivering today. A gardener appears, yawning and stretching as he begins his morning rounds. He greets you with a smile, offering a handful of fresh-picked berries. You pop one into your mouth, savoring the burst of sweetness, and thank him for sharing the garden's bounty. There's a quirky tidbit. Some Aztec gardeners believed that eating the first fruit of the day would bring good luck, while others insisted it had to be a flower petal for the magic to work. You decide to try both, just in case. The city is waking up, too. You hear the distant clang of a bell, the soft murmur of voices, and the splash of water as fishermen launch their boats into the canals. The flower market is already stirring, traders setting out their freshest blooms and calling greetings to one another. You pass a group of children chasing each other through the rows of maize, their laughter echoing through the garden. The world feels new and full of promise, as if anything could happen on this bright, golden morning. You pause at the edge of the emperor's private garden, peeking through the hedges at the rarest flowers and carefully tended paths. The midnight intrigue of the night before seems like a distant dream, replaced by the calm order of a new day. You spot the gardener from last night, carefully inspecting the midnight orchids for any sign of mischief. He catches your eye and winks, as if to say, "Another night, another story." You wander back toward the main path, the sun now high enough to warm your face. The garden is alive with color and sound, every plant and creature shaking off the last traces of sleep. You feel a sense of gratitude for the night's adventures, the floating gardens, the midnight rituals, the secret feasts, and the gentle company of frogs, fireflies, and coyotes. The Aztecs believed that every dawn was a gift, a chance to begin again and honor the beauty of the world. You take one last look at the garden, its flowers shining in the morning light, and promise yourself to remember this night. The city is calling, and it's time to return to the waking world, but a part of you will always linger here. In the heart of the Aztec garden, where dreams and reality meet. The garden's colors soften as the sun climbs higher, and the last traces of night slip quietly away. You feel the gentle warmth on your skin, the coolness of dew still clinging to your clothes, and the sweet, lingering scent of orchids and marigolds in the air. The city's sounds grow distant, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the quiet hum of bees beginning their morning work. You let your breath slow, each inhale filled with the memory of moonlit paths and secret rituals, each exhale carrying away the worries of the day. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the peace of the garden settle deep into your bones. The world feels softer here, the edges blurred by sleep and the gentle promise of a new day. You remember the laughter of children, the wisdom of gardeners, and the quiet strength of the flowers that bloom only in the dark. The Aztec garden is a place of beauty and mystery, a world where every petal and every shadow holds a story. As you rest, the sounds of the garden fade to a gentle whisper. The breeze moves through the trees, carrying with it the last notes of a distant song. You feel safe, wrapped in the comfort of ancient earth and the soft glow of morning. Whatever dreams you carry from this night, let them linger a little longer, gentle and bright as the first light of dawn. Now, let your breath grow slower, your thoughts lighter, and your body softer. The Aztec garden will wait for you, always blooming, always ready to welcome you back. Drift off, knowing you are safe, cherished, and part of a story that stretches across centuries. Good night and sweet dreams.